Today's guest is a certified death man. He is he's that Sherpa that helps you through that last step into the final frontier. Today's guest is here to talk everything we don't know about death and being dead. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mortician Frank Giles.
And let myself unwind. Shine that light on me. I'll sit and tell you my stories. Shine on me, and I will find a song. I will sing it just for you.
We are here today with Frank Giles. Thank you for being here, man.
You're quite welcome. It's an honor.
Well, it's nice to have you in here, man. It's nice to have somebody that's really that concierge kind of for the dark arts. You're really right there. I mean, you're kind of the bellhop for the devil or for God, really.
That's right. That's one way to look at it. You know, we're checking your reservation. We're going to get you there one way or the other.
Yeah. I got to ask you this. Take me through the process of when you guys get a body.
Okay. The first thing that happens is normally a phone call. And that phone call, most of the time, is going to come from either a hospice nurse, a nurse at a hospital, nursing home, or maybe even the county coroner. And they're going to call and they're going to say, we've had a patient expire, or we've got a client in need of your services. And they're going to say something like that. And then we're going to go through and get some information such as, their name, where they're located, who the next of kin is, and just some short information. And then the next thing that happens is we've got to receive that body into our care. So it doesn't matter if it's at a house or a hospital or a nursing home, wherever that person dies, we've got to go.
You have to go to that locale.
We've got to go to that location. And most of the time, see, I'm in a small community in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We don't have people that, take bodies to the morgue, and we don't pick them up in the morning. When they call us, we're rolling that immediately.
Oh, it's a one-stop shop over there with you guys.
That's right. So if you call us at 2:00 in the morning, we've got an answering service that answers our phone at night. And so they're going to take down all the information, and then they're going to call us. We're going to wake up, from dead sleep. We're going to put our suits on. We're going to go to the funeral home, get the hearse, and then we're rolling to the location.
Now, when you go to that locale, do you show up? Do you go by yourself, or you take a sidekick?
No, we always take two people, because in the words of Forrest Gump, when you go to a house call, especially, you don't ever know what you're going to get. I mean, somebody could be dead in a bed, or they could have died on the toilet like Elvis. Wow. I mean, you really don't know.
And you got to go in there.
That's right. We've got to bring that person out of that house, no matter where they've died in the house, whether it be the attic, the basement, the bathroom, the bedroom, whether they be 100 pounds, whether they be 500 pounds. We've got to get that person, and we've got to bring them out of the house into the funeral home.
Have you ever had to call for backup? You show up and they got somebody, they're real girthed out. Somebody's real, just fully, just a real big dog or a big lady.
Most of the time, they will tell us that ahead of time. Somebody will try to give us a heads up and say, you might need to bring some extra help or whatever.
You might want to bring somebody from the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've taken as many as 4 or 5 people out to one house, to get a body, or, to a hospital, to make sure that we can get the body back.
And how do you guys just like everybody, like on the count of 3, let's lift, like that kind of deal? Or are the bodies hard when you get there, or are they still soft?
It depends on how long they've been dead. Sometimes they're still warm. They're still soft and warm. Sometimes they've already gone into rigor mortis, and that's where they kind of stiffen up. But, in the funeral industry, one of the things that you will use more than most is a clean white sheet. when we go, we'll take a white sheet.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be white, but any type of sheet, we'll roll it under them and everything, get a sheet under them so we can lift up on the sheet. We've got other devices that are designed to do that have handles. So if you've got a large person that, that are rated for, 500 to 1,000 pounds and everything, so that you can, because that's the thing about a deceased person is they are what's considered dead weight.
Wow.
And so, but if you've got something with handles that you can use, it makes lifting it a whole lot easier.
Okay, so sometimes if it's a real big dog or a real big gal, you got to really get that tarp under them or something real sturdy.
That's right. You've got to get some type of body mover under them so that you can lift them up and get them to your mortuary cot.
And what's the biggest person you think you've ever retrieved out there?
Probably just under 600 pounds.
Man, that's big, huh?
That is big.
And so you get the body now in a larger city. They'll go to the coroner first, or what is that? What is the coroner?
Well, the coroner, depending upon the county and the situation, like for instance, in our county, the coroner responds if someone isn't under hospice care or isn't under doctor's care, and then he responds. And so, for instance, like if we walked in and just found you dead here today, then they would call, and the police would come and the coroner would come and they would do a death investigation. And if they decided that it was no foul play, there's no need for an autopsy, then they're going to call us and we're going to come get you.
So everybody doesn't get autopsied?
No. And it all depends upon your area. One thing that most people don't realize with funeral homes and some of the laws and things is they are very state by state, and even in the state, sometimes regional, as far as funeral customs. And like in a bigger city, there are going to be a lot more autopsies, whereas, where I am, there's very few autopsies.
Wow. So it's just direct to you. It's direct to...
Right.
It's farm to table, really.
Exactly, because in Christian County, we don't have a medical examiner. A medical examiner is the actual person, is the pathologist that does the autopsies.
Okay.
There's one in Madisonville, Kentucky, that covers the whole western part of the state of Kentucky. So there's one for like a third of the state. So, they can't send everybody to him. Otherwise he'd be overworked.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's just, heart attack, or, they'll go through, they'll ask the family, did he have any heart conditions? What was his medical history? And then, they'll make their judgment based on that.
So if you had to kill somebody, right? If I'm a killer.
All right, you're a killer.
And do I want to kill in a particular type of county that may be more rural?
That would probably be a better way to get away with it in a smaller community, because that way, they don't have all the necessarily resources.
Have you ever rolled up on a body and they're like, yeah, they just died naturally, and you kind of felt like they didn't, but it's not really your responsibility?
No, not really. We've got good professionals that they do their job and everything else. Now, one time I did roll up on a suicide, and they had worked it and everything else.
And how'd they do it?
They said
rope or gun. I mean,
no, it was self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. It was everything.
From the bottom or from the side.
I can't remember, but the thing about it was, they had, when they'd gone through and cleared the scene, when I went over there to start my part, I called one of the deputies back in and I said, do y'all want this gun for evidence, or, because it was still right there.
Oh, wow.
They just left the gun there, and it's like, okay, before I touch anything and contaminate this scene, what's happening here? And they're like, oh, we forgot to move that. Yeah, I believe you did. Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Things get a little shoddy out there.
Yeah,
huh?
Occasionally, I guess it was the night shift,
Oh, yeah, man, the night shift. That's like when you go to like a Hampton Inn or something and they got that night manager. It's barely somebody that's even alive sometimes, Dude, they had a blind. I was in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is probably 9, 12 years ago. and they had a blind man working as a night manager, man. And he just looked trapped back there. I felt like somebody just, I don't even know if he knew where he was, but you hit that bell and he'd come out there, you know? So night manager can be anybody. What about this? So now you get the body, okay?
All right.
So take us from there. Once you get that body, then what happens? What do you do with it?
Okay, so when we get the body back to the funeral home,
Oh, yeah.
if the body is going to be embalmed, then we go ahead and we start the embalming process.
Immediately?
Immediately. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to start embalming.
Damn.
Because the thing about our business is you don't know when the next person's going to die. You might go an entire day and not get anybody. But then the next day you might get 4 back to back.
How often do people die?
Well, for instance, we at our current location we'll do about 125 funerals a year.
Okay.
Out of one facility, and then I've got another facility that's going to do about 120 calls a year.
What's the most dyingest time of year? When do people tend to really just say, "All right, I'm gonna die. I'm dying"?
Normally your first quarter, January, February, March.
Ooh, why?
Cold, stress. The holidays are over because, I believe that, somebody can have the will to live, and in the end, they've got Thanksgiving, they've got Christmas, they're waiting, the family's coming in at Christmas, the family's coming in at Thanksgiving, but then in January, they're like, we won't see them again for another year. Or maybe they'll come in at the summer and get depressed and,
say, hell with that, I'm out.
And, once you get depressed, you kind of just, how it was back when everybody was under quarantine and you couldn't see your friends and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody got depressed.
Oh, you couldn't even tickle anybody. I remember that.
That's right.
They tried to take a guy to jail for tickling somebody in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, stuff just haywire, man. So people will hold out for the holidays, hold out for that time with the family. Once the Super Bowl's over, though, people are like, "Oh, F it, I'm dead."
That's right.
Wow.
Normally in the funeral business, if it's your first quarter and your last quarter are your 2 busiest times.
Okay. And so what you get that body, you pick that sucker up. How do you know if they're going balm or if they're going dust?
Because we're going to talk to the family. Most of the time we'll talk to the family either by the family's there where the body is, if it's at the nursing home or if it's at their home, the family's there, and we'll have a interaction with the family and go ahead and talk to them about some preliminary things.
Oh, hell
get permission to do the embalming, and then we'll go back. And sometimes they might say, well, no, he wants to be cremated, or we're going to do this, and so we want it done different. But once we get permission, we're going back to the funeral home and we're going to start that embalming process.
Now, if they go cream, right? How do y'all do it? Y'all do stove? Y'all do not barbecue, but like luau style? How do y'all do it?
No, it's more of the crematory has this chamber that you put the body in, and that's how the body's cremated.
And is it briquettes or wood? Like, what is in there? Do you know?
No, it's gas.
Oh, damn.
Because it has to be it's preheated to about 1,400 degrees before the body goes in.
And do you put the body in there?
No, I've got somebody else that does that.
Okay. And is that a trustworthy person usually? That person to
Yes.
me seems shady.
Yeah, no, that's a very trustworthy person.
Wow. Because I just can't. I mean, and how long does it take to really grill somebody down?
Most of the time, it depends upon the size of the person and how new the crematory is.
Like a grandparent, though, how much you think?
Oh, you're probably a little over an hour.
Damn. And what about what about that 600-pounder?
Now, see, that's different because you think of somebody that's 600 pounds and the fat that's on them.
Oh, yeah.
That becomes a controlled grease fire. So the crematories have weight limits on them. So some crematories can only do 500 pounds. Some of them can only do like 700 pounds. Some of them are rated for 1,000. And so you have to make sure that you don't get somebody too large for that crematory, because otherwise you can have a major problem. One of my friends who had a crematory, he was cremating somebody, and he didn't realize that they were as obese as they were, and so he had a grease fire going. You couldn't tell it from inside, but the crematory was smoking, and they're not supposed to smoke because the afterburner is supposed to be burning off all that smoke. Well, he was in downtown in a city and rolling black smoke. He gets a call from the funeral home.
And what, he just set it to cook and left? He just like a
no,
crock pot?
He was sitting inside the building with the crematory.
Oh.
And so he was sitting in there, you know.
But he didn't notice.
And
He's in there.
he couldn't see all the smoke outside.
And he gets a call from probably a Native American, I guess,
well,
saying, hey, man, look, y'all got some rough signals rolling, huh?
But the funeral home was actually across the street from the crematory, and somebody from the funeral home called and said, what's going on over there? You're rolling a lot of smoke. Well, about the same time that they called, the fire department showed up.
And the fire department had to come?
The fire department came because there was all this smoke. And it wasn't anything that needed the fire department, but they just showed up.
Wow.
So needless to say, he learned a lot that day.
Dang, so because the body, it's just like having, my sister sometimes, her and her husband will make cracklings, you know?
Uh-huh.
They'll make cracklings in the yard, and they'll cut up all the fat and put it in this big open thing. And somebody's got to be right there with like a boat oar, just kind of hitting it every now and then. Once they put the body in the into the crematorium, into the furnace, do they kind of hit it with a thing every now and then, or they just, it's one time, it's kind of just, you know, start and close the door?
No, it's kind of start and close the door, and then of course they'll run it through, you know, to grind up the bones and everything that don't burn down.
So there's a grinder in there too?
Well, no, the grinder's after they pull the cremains out.
Okay, so you put that body in, you grill them down, you know? And can you do well done? Can you do rare, or it's just one?
No, it's just one setting.
Okay. Damn, one setting.
You can't get a medium rare person.
Yeah. That's what I would go, something a little bit more, you know, ceviche or something, you know.
Not quite so fine, you know.
Yeah. I want to be a little grainy, you know. So once they get that bone and everything else burns down?
You know, they take, and what doesn't burn down, they run through that kind of grinder, and, you know, to where they can make it real fine.
Okay. And
depending on what crematory you use and what kind of grinder they've got, some cremains are finer than others.
Really?
Uh-huh.
So who's more of a finer cremain? Like, what are you talking about, like a Japanese guy?
No, it's just, you know, because a lot of times there's companies that own these crematories, so that you don't have, so every funeral home doesn't have to own one. There's like a third party guy that has this crematory, and you take your body there, and, you know, they'll do it for you. And so some of those guys, you know, if they have newer stuff, it might be finer than the older, you know.
If they're running that push mower.
Yeah,
totally, man. Yeah. Every now and then you got somebody who just, you know, they haven't sharpened the silverware in a while.
Exactly.
Like, damn, what are y'all cremating this thing with, spoons?
One thing about the cremation process that you'll find interesting.
Yeah.
If somebody has a pacemaker, that has to be removed before cremation, because that battery will explode.
No.
And if that battery explodes, it can actually ruin the chamber that they use for the cremation.
Wow. It's like when some asshole would throw a can of WD-40 in a ditch fire when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's out there.
Or that can of hairspray.
Yeah.
That white rain.
Somebody whip a can of white rain in that fucking fire, bro.
That projectile's coming at you.
Yeah, dude, somebody's going down, man. That's when you just let the Lord work, man. That was kind of like a rural version of Russian roulette, man. Everybody's out there, somebody's cooking a wiener, a couple kids are just running, just jumping through the fire. You notice little evil Knievels, and then some a-hole just freaking just flips a can of Aquanet into that bastard.
That's right.
And you know it's just pure luck from there on out. Okay, so if those are the body, you have any questions, Sean, that came up?
We got one from Melissa about embalming.
Hey Theo, this is Melissa calling from Jacksonville, Florida. I have a question for the Mortician. The question is, have you ever had a customer request you to embalm them when they were alive? Gang, gang.
Gang, baby. Beautiful young lady asking these death questions right here. And have you ever had anybody just want to, you know, get a little hit of it?
No, I have not, because I could imagine that would be quite painful if you were still living.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things that we do is we wire their mouth shut, and once you start, I would imagine that would hurt. And when we make our incision and start injecting the fluid, I imagine once we hit you with that fluid, it's going to burn.
So say a living person even just took a couple grams or a couple, 20 milliliters in the arm or something. I mean, would it kill somebody, you think?
I would venture to say if you were injecting it into your artery, it probably would.
Wow. What's in it?
Well, there's a lot of different things in it. There's formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, perfuming agents, water conditioning agents. And so, but the bulk of them are formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde. And so and as a matter of fact, this is a bottle of arterial solution.
Really?
So this has got your formaldehyde in it and your glutaraldehyde in it.
That's that death gravy, huh?
That's right.
Hey,
this
man.
one's called Chromatec Pink.
Ooh.
Made by Dodge Chemical Company.
And who goes pink? Do different people go a different color? That might be for a lady.
Sometimes you mix the colors, but most of the time you can use Chromatec Pink on a man, on a woman. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I want something a little more gray or something.
Well,
blue.
we've got some suntan dyes and stuff that we can put in there, can kind of make it a little darker,
Really?
something like that. So you've got some dyes that you can put some stuff in there, and then of course the cosmetics that you use can also make it to where if you want to look like that bronzer look, like you've been laying out, you just came back from Florida or whatever.
Yeah. That one last tan, huh?
That's right, that final tan.
I love that, man.
We hook you up.
So you got a couple items here. You got that Chromatec Pink, and so that's just that big sip. You put it right into somebody, right? How many bottles of that you throw into somebody?
Well, normally about 2.
That's it?
Because we'll mix this up. We'll mix this with some other fluids that we have, such as a water conditioner, another fluid that's called ProFlow that's kind of like a vein conditioner and an artery conditioner, and we'll mix all that in about 2.5 gallons of total solution. And so it's about 2.5 gallons of solution that we put in the average body.
Okay.
And so what we do is we put that and inject that with an embalming machine through the artery. And at the same time, it's pushing the blood and stuff out the vein.
Okay, so you don't drain the body first.
No, it's a simultaneous process.
Okay, so where do you put the entry and where do you put the outry?
Well, different embalmers use different locations.
Where do you go?
I normally go
I won't tell anybody.
I normally go to the femoral down here on the leg.
Okay.
Because that way,
Big Daddy getting wild.
because that
there,
way,
man.
if it's a lady and she's got a low cut garment, she's going to show a little cleavage at her visitation and funeral.
I don't blame them.
You can do that.
If you still got them.
Exactly. If you paid for them, and they're still sticking up, and you want to show it, that's fine. But you've got. So I normally go down here to the femoral, and I'll inject in the artery and drain through the vein.
So you'll do it in and out the same area, same locale.
Yep. Because as you're injecting, it's going to go all the way through, through all the arteries and stuff back to the heart, and then come back out the veins. So.
And so you run in 2.5 gallons, you said about.
Normally about 2.5 gallons for the average person. And
you'll flush out how much? Same?
Yeah, you'll flush out the same, and now it won't be all blood. You get about, probably about 75-80% of all the blood out. Some of the blood's still in the body.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll get out that much. So.
Wow. Damn, boy, you rocking right there on the cusp, dog. That's wild. Do you ever need a couple drinks to get through it?
No. One thing about it, I very seldom drink. As far as drink alcohol. But,
yeah.
But a lot of people in the business do, and it's just all in your mindset. This business isn't cut out for everybody. Because you think about it, and in the one of the most popular scriptures that's used in the funeral business or in the funerals is the 23rd Psalm, and it talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Well, the shadow of death's where I live. You know, that's basically where I live, because somebody's dying, and that's where I'm pretty much staying. You know. So.
Oh, you out there Voldemorting, man? You milling around.
That's
you know?
right. That's right. I'm just waiting on the next one.
Do you ever see people around town and you're like, oh, I'll probably get a call on this one in a week?
Oh, not normally, because, you know, most of the time those people are in the nursing homes. But you never know.
You ever run a pool with the people at work?
No, we don't. As far as when somebody's going to die, no, 'cause that's just bad juju right there,
Yeah.
you know. Then that might make you the next person. You never can tell.
Yeah, you're right. I hate to interrupt this episode, but you know what I'm talking about right now? People struggling with nose pubes. People struggling with a stray hair, reaching out your nose, trying to get something. Get a handful of gravy, get something. And that's why you got to take care of yourself. With the new performance package from Manscaped. Trim up your manhood, trim up your snout. I've never really enjoyed long nose hair. And sometimes if I don't have any feelings going on in my life, I will reach into my nose and pull out all the hairs I can at once. Just to have something. And sometimes it almost makes me cry. Manscaped Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. It includes the Weed Whacker, the ear and nose hair trimmer, which is waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system. Look, 79% of partners polled admitted that long nose hair is a turnoff. So, turn it off completely. Get the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, best trimmer on the market for your balls, butt, and body, triple B's. The Performance Package is the best value that Manscaped has to offer. Get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/Theo. I'm talking to a deaf man today, and it can be death to the hair on your body. Support the podcast. Get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com/Theo. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com/Theo. What are you waiting for? Go whack your weeds. The best way to listen to anything is to listen through a pair of premium wireless earbuds. You know, people listen through certain earbuds and they can't hear everything. You'd be like, oh, what'd they say? You got to replay it. Or you don't get it. Some earbuds, you don't get treble and bass. You get one or the other. What? What is that? So now they have a new everyday E25 earbud from Raycon. And they're the best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime. 6 hours. Seamless Bluetooth pairing. More bass. You want that bass. More compact design and noise isolating fit. You want premium wireless earbuds and you want them at a discount, and the only place to get them is Raycon. Their earbuds are stylish and discreet. No dangling wires or stems. The company was co-founded by Ray J. And it's also used by people like Snoop Dogg, Melissa Etheridge, Brandy, J.R. Smith, Mike Tyson. They're obsessed with their Raycon E25 earbuds. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/Theo. That's buyraycon.com/THEO for a special 15% discount on Raycon wireless earbuds. Make sure to check it out now while the deal's running. Buyraycon.com/Theo. And now, back to the podcast with the Death Man, Frank. So you got a couple items here now. You got a pint of that embalm there. And then you got this other little holster here. What is that?
That's a cremation urn.
Dang.
It's a black onyx cultured marble urn.
And is that a basic? Is that your basic run of the mill?
Well, that's kind of a standard. that some people use. Some people like the marble because you can engrave on it and it's pretty sturdy, unless you just throw it out the window, but a lot of people use the marble urns for cremation, after they've had them cremated, and, it looks nice. You can either set it on your mantle if you're going to keep it, or you can also bury it, put it in a columbarium wall. There's lots of things you can do with cremains.
Yeah, it looks like you'd almost look for a dang Kleenex out of that one. It's almost perfect that size.
Exactly.
How much cremains do you get total?
Let's see. I would say it's going to probably, well, for one thing, it's if the person has never had a normal situation, you're going to get probably somewhere around, 180 cubic centimeters or something like that.
So how many handfuls is that, you think?
Oh, it's several. It's probably going to be about that much.
Oh, like 40 handfuls maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to fill this up, but it's going to come pretty close.
Okay. And how fine is it? Are we talking salt? Are we talking, it's more like Dest sand that's down in Destin? Are we talking more like Black Beach kind of sand you'd find out in San Francisco? What kind of... What's the vibe of that dust, that death dust?
It's probably, I guess, a little bit bigger than salt.
Okay. And is there any gristle in there, or it's all the same?
No, sometimes there's, you'll catch a bigger chunk of bone that made it through or something like that. And it's
half a molar, a filling, anything like that?
No, you won't ever catch anything that big normally. And normally it's pretty gray. It's not.
Do you feel bad having done probably, how many embalms have you done?
Oh, let's see, probably throughout. I've probably been involved in, I don't know, about 4,000 or something.
Damn, bro, you going to hell, bro. You riding dark, dog. 4,000?
So, because I've been doing it over half my life.
Dang, bro. Does one come to mind that there was just the toughest one for some reason? Something happened.
No, I mean, I would
know.
say
It seemed like one was in your head there for a second.
Because, I think back and, one of the things that's so different is a regular embalming, you're pretty good. It's pretty much the same. You're going to get by with a real small incision, something like that. And then, that, and then a little puncture wound about the size of my pinky. That's about normal. Whereas when you get somebody who's been autopsied, that's when you see that big Y incision that you see on the TV all the time, and you have to treat. There's a lot more work to that because you can't just inject one site because they removed all the viscera. So
you'll put it in, it'll start flowing out in the middle.
So you have to inject down each leg and the arms, and you have to inject the carotids up the head.
And how do you if there's a leak, what do you do? Put a chip clip or something? Like, what do you do? Just
if there's a leak while you're like in the vessels, while you're doing it, you'll put a clip on it.
Okay.
But then what you do is you have to take, like for instance, in an autopsy, in a full autopsy, they remove your brain.
Damn, who does?
The pathologist.
Oh my God.
And so when they do all that, they remove your brain and all your organs and everything else, they come back to us and they're in the cavity, but they're in just a biohazard bag.
Oh, kind of like when you get that turkey at the holidays, huh?
Yeah, kind of like that.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they take all the stuff out and put it back in a little sack.
Yeah. I guess you could relate it to that.
Dang.
And so, like, we have to go back and we have to make sure that the head doesn't leak and that and then we have to sew that back up because they don't sew it back up. Because, they'll take and they'll cut you from behind the ear to behind the ear. Oh. And then it's like one of these deals where you can flip it forward to where your hair is actually on your nose.
Oh, wow.
And then that's how we have to get back in there to make sure that all those vessels are going to be to where it doesn't leak, and it doesn't leak on the casket, while we're having the visitation or the funeral.
So you get the body, right? And wait, what happens to the? Before I forget this, what about like a man's penis? Right? Oh, do a lot of people die holding their penis? I feel like.
No.
You know what I'm talking about, though? Like, I'll notice if I'm falling asleep, sometimes I'll wake up and I'm just holding my penis for no reason. I think it's just a natural thing. You know, it's just, this is my penis and I'm holding it, you know, kind of. But when you find a lot of bodies, are they doing it, holding a certain part of their body? Or they just, do some people just like do like this, like they're ready to die, so they know they're dying? Is there any type of thing you notice, like a jet, like something, like a peace out? Is there anything people are doing?
No, normally they're just, it's just wherever their hands fall, and
Like
so a lot of times it's just, if they're down beside them or if they're right there,
somebody will die like
yeah,
that. Huh?
sometimes they've got them like that because they start to, put them in that. Sometimes they start putting them in that position, but at the nursing home or whatever.
Have you ever gone to a home where they adjusted the body after it had died for some reason? Like they didn't want it to be a certain place, or and you were like, you didn't really ask them questions, but you're like, yeah, I know this guy wasn't just sitting out here in this rocking chair,
Oh, no, because most of the time the people, aren't going to do a whole lot to the body.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that, you think?
Because there's a lot about death that people don't understand, and there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable around it, and they're just uncomfortable with, the whole death and dying process because they aren't as exposed to it as they used to be.
Yeah.
Because back in the old days where the funeral director or the embalmer would come to the house and he would embalm the body at the house.
No.
Yes, he had.
Wow.
He had what was called a cooling board, because that was back when they would have like an embalmer and a funeral director, but he wouldn't. That was back before funeral homes, so he didn't take them back there. You did everything at the house or took the body to the church.
Damn.
But most of the time they
like
did
Postmates or something.
They
Like
did
post-mortem.
They did the embalming right there at the house.
Dang.
And so, for instance, I've got an old glass bottle that was found. Somebody found it when they were cleaning up around an old house. And what it is it's an old glass fluid bottle. And when they embalmed the body, they threw the glass bottle out the door, and it, got covered up. And so when they were tearing down this house, they found it and somebody brought it to me.
Dang.
Because used to, they'd embalm the bodies at the house. They'd come out, they'd bring what was called a cooling board, and they'd set that up, and then they'd put the body on the cooling board. And back then, because they were doing it that way, they'd inject and drain right here in the arm, so that way they could just hang the arm off the side, and then the blood would just drip down into the
ground.
Well, most of the time they were doing this like in your house, so it would drip down into whatever bucket or whatever reservoir that they had to catch it.
And when was this up until, do you know?
That was back until probably, probably back in the 40s.
Wow.
And
the cooling board, what was that? Was it ice? It had ice in it, or how?
No, it was just what it was called. That's just what it was called. It was just like, it was more rustic than a fold-out massage table.
Okay.
That would be kind of what you think about it today, is they would come up with that table and they would fold it out and put the body on it, and then they'd take that back with them.
Man. When you go to pick up a body in the middle of the night, do you knock or do you ring the bell? Or people are usually standing outside?
Sometimes I'll knock. Sometimes if I can see them in there, I'll just walk right on in the house. And, because I'm in kind of a small area, and a lot of times I'll know the family or know some family member, and so I'll just walk, or sometimes I'll knock as I'm entering, because, they're sitting there waiting on you.
Oh. So, Frank, you get the body, right? What happens when you get the body after you do the fluiding?
All right.
The fluid's out. You got the fluid. And what do y'all do with the blood that comes out?
You really want us to answer that question?
Yeah.
It goes right down the drain.
No.
Yes. It goes right down the drain and right into the system, and you better hope that your water treatment guy is doing his job, because if not, the person down the river is getting it.
Dang.
Bec-
So you could get that A positive hit just on a damn
because no, they
just
treat
out the
it
tap.
because during this process, we're always running water. And they've done tests, and they've said that with us running as much water as we do, that it's no difference from if you were to cut your finger and stick your finger under the tap water of your kitchen. It's no difference than that blood being diluted than when we embalm a body.
Then when y'all drop a couple gallons down there with the amount of water.
Because we're constantly running water when we're embalming just to get the blood off the table and get it on down the drain. And then we're also bathing the person while we're doing the embalming, because that massage, when you bathe them, helps circulate the fluid.
Now, you ever keep a little bit of blood, put it on the plants or anything like that? You ever know anybody did anything like that?
No. Why would you put blood on the plants?
Well, whenever I used to live up in Natchez, they used to have a man, they said, and he was I guess he worked with blood or something. He was like a blood man. And they said he would take some of the blood and put it on his house plants at home just for the vitamins and minerals, No,
I've never heard of that. That's a new one on me.
Have they ever caught anybody in your industry doing something vile, or caught them, somebody, kind of skimming off the bottom there, stealing blood, or, copping femurs or something out of deceased or anything?
Now, there have been people in the industry, especially mainly like hospital attendants or something like that, who have, gotten caught, trying to sell body parts or something like that. But no reputable funeral person is trying to sell blood or, bones or anything that's, to any black market people.
There's no side hustle or anything.
No, there's no side hustle on that. There's for sure in Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Now, tell me about this. So say you get the body, it's been embalmed. Now what do you have to do to it?
Okay. Well, the next process we would be waiting for would be the process of dressing, cosmetizing, casketing, and getting the body ready for the visitation.
Is that your responsibility?
Yes.
Okay.
Or that's part of my responsibilities.
Now, who sells the casket to them?
I do that as well.
No way.
Yeah. I'm one-stop shop.
Hey, man.
You
like the Papa-Lock of death.
That's right.
Now, is that a little bit of a tough vibe? Because, I mean, you have to sell someone. You have to then do a real business,
Right.
And you're dealing with like a human life.
Exactly. Most states, like for instance in Kentucky, you can be either a licensed funeral director, a licensed embalmer, or you can be both. So, for instance, I'm dual licensed. I have both licenses.
Okay, so you got both of them. So you're permitted to do it.
That's right.
And so you'll do it all the time. Then it's natural.
Right.
Now, what's that basic casket, man? That basic death box. What's that number one deal?
So now you talking about?
I'm talking basic, dog. Like you barely want to go to heaven.
You barely want to go to heaven.
Yeah. I mean, like showing up to heaven on the Greyhound. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about just a seat. It ain't even a whole ride, baby.
You're talking about a price on that.
Yeah. What's that?
You're gonna be talking about something like $9.95.
So for under $1,000, you can get boxed up.
No, that's just for the box.
Okay, that's the box only. That's not the service.
Right.
Wow.
Because in 1985, the Federal Trade Commission came in and they said, you've got to have a charge for everything that you do. So, they said.
So there's no freebies in the death community.
Right. Wow. So they said, because used to pre-1985, a lot of times you went into the selection room and that's where all the caskets are out.
Oh, yeah.
And when you would go, you'd look at this casket and it'd have a price on it, and it was everything included. Mm-hmm. Well, then they said, somebody might not want everything in there, so you have to itemize all your charges, and then you go from there. And so then they pick out all the services that they want. Then they have to add their casket to it, vault if they're using a vault, and then that's your funeral total.
Mm. And that vault, how is the vault really necessary, man, or is it better to just get, I want almost the gift wrapping. I want that low key,
Well, some cemeteries require vaults.
Okay.
Some states require vaults. It all depends. In Kentucky, a vault is the vault requirement is based on the cemetery.
Okay.
But a vault will do two things. It supports the weight of the earth off the casket, and it also keeps water and other elements and bugs and things from getting to the casket.
And how long does a casket last you?
Well, it depends upon the type of casket. For instance,
That $9.95, brother, how long is that going to get me?
it depends if, vault or no vault. If you're not getting it in the vault, it's not going to last very long.
Are we talking 8 months or something?
It's going to depend upon, a lot of it depends upon ground conditions, because you think,
That soil.
yeah, because if you're in a real wet area, that thing's going to be sitting in water, and water is not good for metal or wood and everything else, whereas it's going to last longer if you're in a drier area.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you go back to the ancient Egyptians, some of those bodies that were just buried in the desert where it was real dry, they lasted almost as long as those that were mummified.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, you go to like a swampy area in Africa, or you go to Louisiana, man, that thing's just a little snack for the swamp.
That's right.
Wow.
Casket questions.
Yeah, let's hit a casket question here. What do we have here?
What up, Theo? What up, Nick? This is Daniel from Tucson. Now, I know Lil Boosie turned down the idea of getting into the casket making business, but I wanted to ask your mortician, what is the most outlandish or extravagant casket you've seen a customer walk out of your store with? Did that thing have some spinners on it? Mm-hmm. Was it a translucent waterbed hitter? I'd like to hear about it. Anyways, gang, gang.
Dang, bro. What'd they put in there? What's the most extravagant casket? You know what I'm saying? Something with some cat toys hanging from the ceiling, or you got something with a little hot tub at one end of it. What's the wildest thing you put somebody in?
Well,
And be honest.
Well, most of the time, the people that are buying your real upscale caskets are going to buy either a bronze casket or a very fine hardwood, such as, a mahogany that might be, where that wood was imported from Africa. And then depending upon the finish work that goes into it, because, whether, it'd be flat top and, the finished parquet and everything else, that's a very expensive casket. And then also, they've got some that are 48-ounce bronze, and kind of look like they almost look gold almost, and you can see like some of the celebrities have been buried in, some of those, like, I'm thinking of Michael Jackson, and, I think, let's see, Whitney Houston, I think was in like a millennium that Batesville makes. And so, some places will use that as a selling point, because the casket companies used to furnish a list basically every couple years of recent celebrities and what caskets that they used.
Really?
Uh-huh.
And what happened to that list, you think?
I think that, as things have come on, they've just quit publishing it. But, for instance, there's a company, it's now owned by Batesville Casket Company, but it used to be called Marcellus Casket Company. And they made the finest hardwood caskets in the world. And
Oh, yeah. Amen.
and so what they would do is they would make these caskets, and one of them was called the President, and the other is called the President Carved Top. And the difference between them is the one that's the carved top, it has a lot of carvings on it, but, JFK and, a lot of those presidents were buried in those two different caskets. And so it was called the President Carved Top and the President. Now, when Ronald Reagan died, he was put in a Marcellus, and it was called the Masterpiece. And the reason they called that the Masterpiece was that
because it had barbecue sauce in it, I bet.
that casket was so big that it would not fit in a standard burial vault. And so, of course, Ronald Reagan was put in a mausoleum that was designed to where it would accommodate that casket. But, that's a little bit larger casket than your standard casket. And so, that's you see that. We sell some mahogany caskets. if we've got somebody that's going to spend a lot of money, most of the time they buy a mahogany casket.
Wow.
Because the look of mahogany, it looks really good.
Oh yeah.
And that's what that's what they want. They like that warmth and the beauty of the wood. Some people find metal, whether it be any type of metal, to be more cold rather than warm like woods. So.
And how pricey does that get? What's the priciest deal you guys have ever put in the ground, man?
Probably, somewhere over 50. Wow.
50K, huh? Man. And do people on average spend more money burying men or burying women?
Probably women, because a lot of times, the men will care less. But now, because they will say, because if you think about it, most people are thinking, well, of all the sacrifices Mama made and, what Mama did for you and everything else. And, Daddy always said, just put me in a pine box or throw me in the ditch or whatever. But Mama, this is Mama. Mama took care of your every need. We got to do a little bit better for Mama.
Yeah. Mama loved you. Yeah. We got to do something for Mama.
Mama and Jesus always loved you, Theo.
That's it. Yeah. Amen, man. So once you get the body, you got it embalmed. What other things do you have to do to the body to make it look presentable if you're going open casket?
Well, we do their cosmetics, and of course we'll dress them in the clothes that the family brings. And sometimes that's suit and tie, and sometimes that's overalls and, flannel shirt, whatever the family wants.
Can you go full naked or not? Can you go nude if you want?
That'd be frowned upon, because, that we wouldn't want to make some people feel bad, if they weren't, as well endowed, if you were full nude and, they'd be like, or it might make them feel better about themselves. I just really don't know.
It'd be interesting to get a look at that body fully nude at the end. I think it almost would make it a little bit more like, okay, they're part of life than they are like it's trying to make them still look alive.
But, you think about maybe more people have seen you fully nude and more would expect that. But most of the time, they want that image as close to how they can remember that person. So unless, America's used to seeing you fully nude, they probably would much rather see you with clothes on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, I think. And especially if y'all going to eat after.
Yeah, because, that's a big thing is, the meal after the funeral. Because, a lot of times either churches will host it or a family member will host it at their house.
And do you guys get invited to that or no?
Sometimes, and a lot of times we get invited, and if we're not really busy, then we'll go. But, sometimes, right after this funeral, we've got another one getting ready to start, so we don't have time to hit up all those meals.
And have you ever accidentally had the wrong body in a closed casket?
No. Because we have lots of procedures to make sure, that we don't do that.
Okay.
And then especially since, we're a smaller town, a lot of times we'll know the person. And so it'll be like, oh, and yeah, that's so-and-so, So
that's Randy.
That's Randy. So he goes in this casket. That's Theo. He goes in this casket.
Wow.
So
is there any... Do you so I don't forget about this. What else do you have to do to the body? You put the cosmetics. What about like the orifices and stuff? How do you make sure that there's no leaking coming out of the body, or there's no, something's not going to come out of someone's nose or eye?
Okay, now that goes back to the embalming process, because the majority of the time, as part of the embalming process, we do a treatment of the organs and the cavities. And that's where we use what's called a trocar. Okay. And we use that to puncture and suck out all the contents of the organs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So you have to suck out whatever's in the stomach and everything?
Right.
Wow. How does that go?
Okay, so you've got a trocar. Trocar is probably, about that long.
And what is it?
It's a metal tube. And you got a handle, and it's got a pointed end, and the way that it works is there's slots and holes in it, and it's hooked up to what's called a hydroaspirator. So water's running through that, creating a suction.
Okay.
And so what you'll do is you'll come 2 inches above and to the right of the navel, and you'll stick that in, and you'll just move it around.
And that's the stomach?
Wow. You'll just move it around, and you're puncturing all the organs and sucking out their contents. Have you ever seen like liposuction on the Discovery Channel or whatever, how they're moving it around and everything else? It's kind of like liposuction.
And can you tell what have people eaten the most usually?
Most of the time you can't tell what foods it is because of the breakdown, but what you can tell is like, for instance, what organ you're hitting based on, what's the color of the fluid that's coming out of it.
You ever been able to tell a food?
No.
Never, not even like a Lucky Charms or anything?
Not that way. Now, sometimes, like if we've had somebody who's choked to death, you've seen the food, still, when you've cleaned out their mouth or whatever, you've seen the food still in there,
And how far down, if people choke to death, is the food pretty far down or it's kind of close, you think?
Well, it just depends, because a lot of times it's I would say it would be pretty far down, but then when they tried to save them, some of that gets brought back up closer to the surface. But, if they were unsuccessful, and I've now got them in my possession, then, they were unsuccessful.
Aye.
Then...
Since you've seen, and now what about the mouth and the eyes and stuff like that? Do you have to do anything to keep them from like just swinging open, or the ears?
Well, one of the first things that we do in the embalming process is we wire the mouth shut, and so we take and we put what's called it's a needle injector, or an injector needle, and we put one up here and one down here.
Dang.
And then we wire their mouth shut.
Thank God, man.
And
I need it. A lot of these women need it, and I need it too.
And then a lot of times to get that good mouth closure or whatever, you'll put a little piece of cotton in there to elevate, like a lip or something if it's drooping and everything else. Now, your eyes, we have what's called eye caps. And those look like contacts with ridges. And then we'll put those, under your eyelid and use that to help keep your eyes closed.
Oh, so you'll go eyes closed. Has anybody ever tried to open the person's eyes when they're deceased?
Not to my knowledge. Of course, a lot of times she'll come back and put a thin little bead of glue on there and the lips. So, that they're also glued. That's an extra layer of protection.
Dang, I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Extra layer of protection.
You don't want somebody peeping, at the funeral.
Yeah, you don't want somebody looking out.
Yeah.
Now, does anybody ever try to come in and see somebody after they've been dead for a little bit? After, anybody come knocking on the door, you guys are already running the hoses and everything, and they got somebody saying, I want to see them one more time?
Oh, sometimes, like if you're, sometimes I think what you're talking about is like if somebody shows up before, we're done embalming and they want to see them, then we don't allow them to come into the prep room to see them.
Wow.
They'll have to wait till the public visitation, or
even if it's a buddy or something.
Yeah, even if it's a buddy.
Wow.
Because we take that very seriously. The family's privacy. So when we have private family visitation.
Oh yeah.
It's private family visitation. And, you don't get to see them. If you're just a buddy, you don't get to see them till that public time. I don't care, why you need to see them earlier. If the family's not going to give you permission, you'll see them, during the public visitation.
A friend of mine works in the death trade, and he's up in Oregon, and he said he worked in it about 20 years ago. He said somebody died one time in the town he was working in. And then while he was out at lunch, they came in and stabbed the guy a couple more times just to make sure he was dead.
Goodness.
Pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, he must have not been well liked.
Yeah, he must have not been well liked.
Sounds like your friend should have locked the door, too.
Yeah, I think he was smoking weed and stuff like that. How do you guys keep jovial when you're working around the dead like that?
It's just, it has to be in you. Because you have to be able to separate the fact, that you're doing what you can for that family. Because there's no greater honor for somebody to entrust their loved one to you, because you think about, this is their prized possession. This is their mother, their spouse, their child.
Oh, yeah.
And they've entrusted that to you. There's no greater honor than that, and you do what you can to, treat them with integrity. You treat everybody like it's, your family member and the way that you'd want to be treated. And so, we are very careful. We make sure, we've got, well, for one thing, you're not going to get in our facility unless we open the door for you, because the facility's locked, and during public visitation, we've got a greeter on all the doors and everything else. So we know who's coming in and out of the building. If it's somebody, before the
Nobody's sneaking backstage.
Yeah, because the back areas are always locked and everything else, and so it's not easy to just sneak in there and do anything. So,
do you feel like you learn anything more about life, or do you feel like have your thoughts and feelings changed over the years working in the death trade?
I think you don't take it for granted, because you know that you can be here today and gone tomorrow. I could get killed in a car wreck going home. And, am I happy? Have I had a good life? Yes, I've had a good life.
We do good numbers on the episode if you did, though, too.
That's right.
Not to say that out loud, but.
That's right. Hey, if it can help you, that'd be all right. That'd be all right. I went out helping somebody else.
Amen, man. We got a question right here. What do we have here, Sean?
We've got a question from Nick.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Nick from Wisconsin. Got a heavy hitter for you. So over the course of your career, how has your attitudes and emotions towards death changed and evolved? Anyways, be good. Gang, gang.
Gang, baby. Yeah, do you find yourself getting more emotional as you get older with it? Is it hard because it just becomes also work? Like, it's tough when things just become work,
Right. It's the hardest part of our job is when we're dealing with children. And because, it's unnatural that a parent should have to bury a child. And, it's hard on that parent, whether the parent's 90 years old and their child's like 60 and dies. It's hard. It's even harder when somebody's 20 years old and, their 7-day baby dies. All that's hard, and you still grieve with them. But, the thing is, at this time, I have to be their rock. I have to be the person that, you come to me, I'm going to handle it. Whatever you need, I'm going to handle it. You put the weight of the world on my shoulders. That's what I'm here for.
Is there a moment where have there been times where you've just broken down? It's just been tough. I mean, there's got to be times where
there's times where it's been tough, and it's, and you'll just see it, and you just got to keep on going.
What are the toughest times though?
I'll never forget, one time I had, I just completed my apprenticeship, and I was fresh out of school, and I had a friend from high school who had taken his life, and I remember I got the call, and that was tough, because my cousin had dated him and everything else, and that was hard. Then
why did he do it? Do you remember?
No. Then fast forward later, I have, it's almost exactly a year later, another friend gets killed in a head-on collision. And then right after that, another friend dies with an enlarged heart that nobody knew he had.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can see that all those things play an influence on you. But you just have to keep on for the family. And, I'll take my time and I'll grieve later. But, right now I have to be strong for that family.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm here for.
Has it adjusted your relationship with a higher power, with faith? Have things changed for you over the time, or what's that journey been like in dealing with the deceased?
I've always had a strong faith, But, when you look at the human body and you look at everything that goes into it and how every system of the body works and everything else, that was laid out, that just didn't happen. And the fact that, we don't understand everything, but, there's a God that's there that does, and he knows. And we, there's times that we think that we would have had a better way, that we would have had a better plan, that it wouldn't have been good for this person to die. But we don't know. We've just got to wait till we get there, and maybe we'll understand it one day at a time, or, at the end. But, you just got to keep on going. You just got to, have trust and faith and go on.
Does it still feel like a human you're working with? Does it feel like just a carcass? Like what is kind of that feeling, because if I'm carrying a human body that's alive, that's one feeling. But if I'm carrying just a deceased human body, I'm wondering if that's a different feeling.
I think that anytime that there is a deceased versus a live person, there is that difference, yes. But the same thing at the same time, even though the deceased is not there, as far as what made them there, like the spirit, that body still deserves that respect, because that was the shell that either held that body for one day or 99 years or 100 years, so it's still all there, and it's still.
Have you seen any, kind of going in a different direction here, but is there anything like with COVID deaths? Have you seen more deaths or anything like that?
Not really, because, everything, the same number of people are basically still dying. It's just that, if they've had anything else but they've got COVID,
right?
They're saying, oh, it's a COVID,
Yeah.
The person might have had COVID, but they actually died from pneumonia. Well, instead of counting that death as attributing it to pneumonia, they're going to say, oh, COVID, or they might have actually died from cancer, but they also had COVID, so COVID.
Yeah, they COVID them up.
Yeah, so
people get COVID no matter everybody. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, they had this, but they also had COVID.
It's like, can somebody die? Can somebody still just die from natural causes, or does it all have to be COVID anymore?
Right.
And there's a lot of families right now that are very upset about that, and sometimes we'll go to a house or whatever, and they'll be like, he didn't die of COVID, she didn't have the COVID, make sure that they don't put COVID on the death certificate.
Really?
And it's like, well, the doctor's the one that fills that portion of the death certificate out, but we'll make sure to tell them that they didn't have COVID, because there's a lot of people who are so tired of hearing about it that that they want to make sure that their loved one isn't a statistic for something that they don't, that they don't necessarily, it's not that they don't believe in it, but they don't want them to just be a COVID statistic.
Yeah.
A talking point for somebody that they don't like.
Now, what about this? What's a wild thing somebody wants to have in there when they die? Somebody throw in a little can of Ruffles, or somebody put a little couple Starbursts in there or something.
Okay, it's not uncommon. A big thing, a lot of people will take cigarettes with them, because you take somebody who's smoked hard.
Boy.
They'll put that, cigarettes in that shirt pocket.
You're going to want that smoke, dude. If I'm dead, bro, light me up a damn 100, baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm burning a fucking Winston, dog. If I'm dead, man, I ain't milling around.
I've had, a lot of people put pictures of themselves,
And what about a joint? Somebody sneak a joint in there sometime.
I'm not going to say that that's never happened, because, when we're standing back up there and the family goes up for their final viewing, there's no telling what they could stick in there. I've had some very interesting stuff. I had somebody request to be buried with their shotgun.
Amen.
So they took their shotgun with them. And so,
what about, now if somebody requests to be buried with an 8-ball, and I'm not talking bowling, I'm talking that cocaine, baby. Do you have to do that?
Well, the thing about it is, since that would be an illegal drug, we wouldn't be required to do that. But if somebody were to bring that in and stick it up under the foot of the casket, I don't keep a drug sniffing dog at the funeral home, so it might just go on through. It might just go with them.
It might go with them. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's one thing. There's no TSA when you flying up to heaven, man.
That's right. That's right. You're not gonna be searched. So.
Now, what's the wildest thing somebody's put in there? Somebody ever put something that's a little too big in there? Somebody try to put a little chainsaw or a leaf blower or something. If somebody died doing during a dangerous, leaf blowing or something,
No, I don't think they've had any power tools or anything like that. Sometimes you have like stuffed animals or whatever, even for like an older person, they'll bring like stuffed animals, they'll bring blankets sometimes. And, we've had, like fishing rods, stuff like that have gone with them. But, as far as, I've never put, I don't think any power tools in there, but
I'd go with a damn sander or something,
So what are you going to use that sander for?
Who knows? But but I'll tell you this: if you show up and you the only dude with a sander, you're gonna be steady working.
That's right, but we're not supposed to work in the afterlife.
But I'm sure there's a couple opportunities to make a little.
You
coin.
Always want a side hustle, don't you?
I want that side hustle. Now, do you take those items out, or those items go on?
The family it's the family's choice. If the family wants something in there for visitation and then they want that back, we'll take it out. But if they want it to go with them, it goes with them.
Now, you close the casket if it's an open casket, you guys close it during the procession or funeral deal?
It depends on when the family wants that closed.
Okay.
If they want it closed at the beginning of the service, some families like for everybody to file by at the end, one final viewing, and then after that, after the family goes up for their final viewing, then we close the casket. So a lot of times that's up to the family. And so.
And now, is it hard for you personally? Do you have trouble? Is it tough to meet women or something like that if you're working in the death trade, I could imagine it might be a little bit of or is it kind of a talking point,
Well, it's one of those things that, that they might be interested in, that they might have a few questions, but, it's not, I would not say that it's a chick magnet, that they're flocking towards the Undertaker, because, the thing about it is, when that call comes in, I'm going on that call. So, if I'm on call, I'm going to be leaving at the middle of the night and everything else. And a lot of people, they get, they don't like that. They don't like that you're going to be gone for that. They don't like that you got to work on the weekends, at night, holidays, that you miss birthdays and everything else. Because it's a big commitment. When you're working in the death care business, because it's 24/7.
Damn.
I mean, because I probably since I've been involved in the funeral business, I've probably spent as many holidays at the funeral home as I have at my house.
Wow.
And
So it's 50-50 split, huh?
That's right. You just don't ever know. And, that's the last thing that, a girl wants, to be on the way to a nice dinner, and then, I've got to go to the funeral home.
Damn.
And
And they ever bring a date over there with you to say this?
No, because then, I keep them pretty separate.
Yeah. Is it tough dating in a small town?
It depends, especially when you're in our business, because you get to know the families.
Oh, yeah.
And, because you're spending 3 or 4 days sometimes with the family in that, and you really get to know them. And sometimes you become like family to them, and sometimes you're like, whoo, stay away from them,
Sometimes you learn a little too much.
Yeah,
huh?
you learn a little too much, and so that makes you want to shy away from, some of them anyway. So,
Do families, can somebody get buried with their money if they want to?
if they want to bring it in, they could get buried with it.
Have you ever had somebody that was their request and they put it in there?
Not all their money, I've had people, want to get buried, with, Granddaddy always kept a $2 bill, or, he always had change in his pocket, didn't want to go anywhere without a little money. I've had that, but I've never had anybody say, we're going to put $1 million in this casket.
Yeah.
Because, then you get to the age-old question. If you put $1 million in there, let's say you put $1 million in there in cash, and then if somebody were to take the cash and write you a check for it, you've still got $1 million. So nobody normally puts cash in there. They just
Maybe we'll put a check.
yeah. So I guess if you wanted to go with $1 million, we could write you a check for $1 million because you wouldn't be able to cash it.
Yeah. I'd rather send the check.
Yeah.
Just in case later you decide, dang, I wish I had that cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody ever puts $1 million or anything in there.
Damn.
You know. So
Have you noticed over time that people used to bury nice things with people, and now they just kind of bury whatever with them? You think has there been able to notice anything like that?
you know, most of the time people, if it's something of real value, they keep it and they pass it down in the family or whatever, you know, especially jewelry and stuff like that. And of course now with, you know, there's so much stuff that, you know, people are using like costume jewelry and stuff like that people are wearing rather than buying, you know, real expensive jewelry that they're doing that. And especially for your older people, because as they get sometimes dementia and stuff like that, the family's already taken their good jewelry away from them so they don't lose it, because, you know, they don't want them to keep the good jewelry in the nursing home or stuff like that. And, you know, because they'll lose it or somebody will steal it or whatever. Now, I have had families bring in really nice jewelry for the visitation and the funeral, and then they want that back. And so...
Have you ever stolen anything from anybody?
No, sir. No, sir. That'd be bad for business.
Yeah, it'd be bad for business, man. I didn't think you had, but I just had to ask you. We got any other questions that came in that are unique?
Yeah, Ross has another question about caskets.
Hey Theo, I'm out here in New York. Just a quick question for the mortician. Open casket or closed casket? Me personally, that open casket, if it was me, I'd feel a little disrespected. I'm not going to lie, you know? But, no, that's it. Gang.
Dang, bro. How you go, man? How do you suggest? You know, you've been around the way. You're really the Rex Ryan of death right here. So what do you say?
It depends upon how they look. I think that the family should be able to have an open casket if the person resembles himself. But, you know, if they've been in very bad trauma, if they've been, you know, in a situation where, you know, they
like
don't...
a cliff fall or something?
Yeah, car wrecks, you know, something like that. But, you know, if they look like themselves, I think the family...
Face fire?
Yeah, face fire, you know, bush hog, you know, something like that.
Oh, I used to drive a bush hog, man. Accidentally killed a deer, man, that was just sleeping one time.
Yeah.
Felt horrible about that. Still feel bad about it, but... So you're saying if they look decent enough, you'd go open casket?
Uh-huh.
You going to go OC, you think?
I think so.
Dang, you heard it.
That's right. That's my plan. I want everybody to see me one more time.
Yeah. Now, some people, their faces get fat. I noticed that the last funeral I went to. People's face get fat when they lay them down like that.
Well, some of it could be that they swelled them during the embalming process, or if they were in the hospital for a long time, that could be part of it. Or sometimes if you've got somebody who kind of has jowls that, you know, well, when they lay back, those fall back. And so it doesn't make them look like themselves, because that should be up here, whereas it's laying back.
How hard is that body when it's laying in the casket? Is it pretty hard?
It depends upon how hard you set it up. And what I mean by that is this embalming fluid, the more you put in, the more it's going to harden somebody up. So you can set them up like really, really hard, but the problem with that is it's going to dehydrate them a lot. So basically you can do that, but they're going to turn more to leather, and they're not going to feel like a human body, and they're going to dehydrate, and so it's going to require a lot more cosmetics and stuff and make them look unnatural.
Damn. Is there any perfect way to do it, man? I can't believe there's only embalming and creaming or cremation. But I think I'd love to be damn wrapped in bacon or something. You know, I'd love to be just, I'd love to be, what's the one where they cut you open and put cheese in you,
Stuffed crust.
Cordon bleu. Or I'd go stuffed crust, son. Stuffed crust would be great.
And so now they do have, sometimes we do what's called like a green burial, and that's where somebody is still buried, but they're not embalmed. And so they don't want to be embalmed, and they just want to be more natural. And sometimes they'll be, just like in a wood casket and buried in a cemetery without a vault and everything else, because they want to go back to the earth as quickly as possible.
And is that growing in popularity?
In some areas it is, but the Jews don't embalm. An Orthodox Jew does not embalm.
Wow.
That's one of the things you learn when you're in mortuary school is different religions and kind of how their preference is. And I'm not for sure if you know this, but I went to mortuary school here in Nashville. There's a mortuary college in Nashville.
Dang.
It's called John A. Gupton College, and it's over on Church Street. And one of the things that they do is your last semester of mortuary school, they assign you to work 1 day a week at a funeral home as part of your schooling. So they've got certain funeral homes that they'll assign you at. And I worked at one here in Nashville, and it was the Jewish funeral home.
Wow.
And so
there's no embalming there.
There's not for the Jews, and they're real strict about it. And so basically,
why? It's just kind of in their doctrine.
Yes. And they have the guild that comes and washes the body and wraps the body and prepares the body. It's a sect from the church. And then we would put the body in what's called an urn. And what that is that's a Jewish casket that's entirely made of wood.
Wow.
And then we would take it to the cemetery and bury it. And
How quickly? Pretty quick?
Pretty quick. Normally if they died today, it would be by sundown the next day.
How fast can you get me in the ground if I die? You guys do any 8-hour packages or anything like that?
I mean, we can get you in the ground pretty quick depending upon the cemetery.
Amen.
So,
Dang.
Used to.
And how deep can you get me? Can I go 12 feet or it's only 6?
No, you can go deeper because
cost more.
No, as long as the ground's good. Because sometimes you've gotten cemeteries and you get down so far and it's solid rock. You hit that bedrock and everything else. But like, for instance, there's cemeteries such as a lot of veteran cemeteries. They do what's called double depth. And so like if you've got a husband and wife, they'll put the first one that dies, they'll put them down, probably 10 to 12 feet.
Wow.
And then when the second one dies, they'll dig down part of the way and then they'll put them there.
Man.
And so they're double depth. Damn. Now, different states have different requirements, and most people, have that ingrained in their head that, I'm 6 feet deep. Well, in the state of Kentucky, the law says that if you're in a burial vault, there only has to be 18 inches of dirt on top of you.
Wow.
Now, most of the time there is more than that, but that's the minimum legal requirement.
So you could go shallow here over in Kentucky. You go 18 inches. Damn. Anybody do it still sometimes?
I mean, most of the times not, but and what it is used to when graves were dug by hand, they used to be sometimes more shallow than they are now when they're dug by machine.
I'll tell you, when I was growing up, they had a man who in our neighborhood who he died, and they buried him in the backyard. They buried him in their backyard, and they invited me and this one kid over there to the service, and we didn't know what a service was. We never seen it or anything, And they said, you want to come to a service? And we thought maybe it was like tennis or something, But we got back there, and next thing you know, we're all sitting in these folding chairs, and they're burying this dude, this old dude, Mr. Polito. And they just put him in the ground, man. And they said, anybody want to say anything? And my friend Summerall, dude, this young fella, he said grace like you would say over dinner. He didn't know what to say, So his little wild ass said, God is great, God is good, God, we thank you for this food. And I just remember standing there just being like, what in the hell's going on, Do some families still just bury their own?
they have to be buried. You can't be just buried on your property unless there's a cemetery there.
Now, how do you get it legally symmetrized?
Well, if it's just a family cemetery, it's the biggest difference is whether or not you're going to be selling plots.
Oh, okay.
If you sell plots to other individuals, that's a whole lot more red tape than if it's just going to be a family cemetery. But you have to have it. You have to have so much area set aside for the cemetery. It has to be reflected in the deed. You have to have permanent egress to it. And so there's a little bit of work that has to be done, and it has to be fenced. And so there's some stuff that has to be done legally to make those requirements. But if you meet those requirements, you're good.
And do you get involved at all if it's a family cemetery?
Yes, we will still be, doing the embalming and take them out there and make sure everything's done legally.
So you can't just go straight from the kitchen table, somebody chokes to death, and just hold them up in the backyard. There's no way to do that route.
Yeah, you can't do that because there's got to be a couple steps in between there.
You guys ever run a coupon deal or anything like in the summer or something like that,
No, we don't ever run that blue light special or buy one, get one free or whatever.
Nothing like that.
No.
It would just taint the industry, huh?
That's right.
I hate my phone bill. I hate it. It's expensive. I have to give them money, but I get to keep using my phone. Well, now premium wireless just got cheaper with Mint Mobile. They're introducing their unlimited data plan for just $30 a month. Let that sink in. Just $30 a month. How much is your soon-to-be ex-wireless provider charging you? For people that hate their phone bill and are ready to cut ties with big wireless, Mint Mobile offers their premium unlimited plan for just $30 a month. By going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes significant savings on to you. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Keep your same number along with your existing contacts. And if you're not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with their 7-day money-back guarantee. That's right. To get your new unlimited plan for just $30 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Theo. That's mintmobile.com/THEO. Cut your unlimited wireless bill to $30 a month at mintmobile.com/Theo. Oh, if you're listening to this past weekend, then you probably have some mental health issues like me. Sometimes it's hard to find help. Sometimes you might live in a barn, you might live in a forest. But Betterhelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 24 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. You could pull over to the side of the road, get on FaceTime with your counselor, boom, right there, BetterHelp. You can communicate by text. You can communicate by phones. You can communicate by different ways. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. If you need help, give it a try. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/Theo. That's BETTERHELP. And join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Special offer for this past weekend listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Theo. If you need help, look into it. And now back to the episode. Any more questions that came in, brother?
Yeah, we got a few. This is from Cole.
Hey Theo, Mortician. Just got back from a run. Got that Zin pack in up top.
Okay.
So Mr. or Mrs. Mortician, I was wondering if you've ever uncovered anything inside or like on someone's body, maybe that hadn't been picked up yet, and like something kind of like Silence of the Lambs, but maybe not as morbid. Well, I guess. And how did you get into Mortician, Ray? Thank you.
I don't know what he means by that first part. You ever uncovered something on somebody? Yeah. You ever found? Yeah, I guess you ever gotten somebody back to the morgue? Is it called a morgue?
Well, where we take them would be back to the preparation room.
Okay. You ever get somebody back there and you find something in their pocket? You find a couple pills, or you find a little, something like that, a snack, a butterscotch, anything like that.
Yeah, no, I've never really gotten anybody back there and then just over well, here's a handful of pills that was missed, or something like that. And because normally the coroner's office or whoever has checked the body has been pretty thorough to make sure that everything is, that they kind of do an inventory and that nothing's missed.
Okay.
Because they kind of have to do those steps before they let us take responsibility for the body.
Now, what about is there one body type, ethnicity that keeps a little bit better than others?
I wouldn't say so. It's all the same as far as the body, and everything else. Now, sometimes dehydration and stuff, if on a pale person, when they start dehydrating and they start getting a little bit darker, it shows up worse on a pale person than it does somebody who's, darker skinned. And
what's the final lacquer you can put on somebody? How much is it to get just a nice, I'm talking 2 coats of just a matte finish, something, not Sherwin-Williams, but something nice, Duluth or whatever it's called.
Well, we've got different cosmetics, and believe it or not, most of the time, you can, you'll just put a very light coat, but then sometimes you have to mask somebody. And when I say mask somebody, that's when you're putting a lot of cosmetics on them because something went wrong.
What do you mean something went wrong? Like they felt like they died by some ants or something?
If they died and for instance, let's say somebody died and they were face down. And nobody found them for a while. Well, what happens is in the body, the blood will settle to the lowest point. The blood starts settling. So if you die
face first downhill,
then a lot of the blood's gonna run to the face. Well, what happens as that blood runs to the face, if it starts in these capillaries on your face, if those start getting so much blood in there that they can't handle the pressure, they'll pop. And once that happens, that blood runs out into this tissue. And that creates a condition that we call postmortem stain.
Ooh.
And if it's postmortem stain, you can't really get that out.
Damn, bro.
And all you can do is cover it.
That postmortem stain, baby. I don't want that.
No.
So if I die, what's the best way for me to die then?
The best way for you to die would probably be in your sleep.
Okay.
But with somebody checking on you so they don't let you just lay there for hours after you die.
So after I'm dead, should someone just roll me over like every 30 minutes or something? Like what's the best way?
No, they should call me.
Okay.
Well, after you die, that's what you should do. You call Frank Giles.
That's it. You call Frank Giles.
That's right.
That canary, baby. He'll get over there and help you to the afterlife. Now, but what's the best way for somebody to take care of the body? Should you rotate it every 30 minutes, or what should you do?
No, just leave it there.
Front down or back down?
Oh, back down. Head slightly elevated.
Okay.
And then
put a book under the head, maybe,
or a pillow.
Okay.
A pillow's always nice.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to tell you about that is, are you familiar with jaundice?
Oh yeah, my sister had jaundice growing up.
Okay, well, jaundice will react with formaldehyde. So we've got there's a special fluid that you use for a jaundice body. And if you don't use the correct fluid, and if you had jaundice really bad, and I just poured this Chromatec pink to you, well, the formaldehyde in it will react with the bilirubin in the jaundice, and it will cause the body to turn green.
Just smurf out almost, huh?
Like Shrek. You be Shrek'd out, like green.
And has that ever accidentally happened?
Well, I've had it happen where like somebody died in another state and they sent them in to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I got this lady one time, and by the time she got to me, she was green.
Mm.
And so then what we had to do was all we could do is cosmetize over it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't go back in and reverse that. And so...
So they might be green underneath, huh?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Could I take a sip of that? You think would it hurt me?
Oh yeah, it hurts you. Yeah, it's they've got all kind of warning labels on there, poison, do not drink, and and it's also a known carcinogen. So
Is it?
yeah, so they tell you that it's going to cause cancer if you're exposed to it too much, and I still work with it every day.
Wow.
That's the risk I take.
Yeah. Dang. If you're helping people with cancer, you might get it.
Uh-huh.
Damn.
But that's why I do what I do, because I'm helping the family.
Yeah. Now, can you eat near the bodies or not?
It's frowned upon. People don't, it's now you're talking about when the preparation's going on. Yeah, that's frowned upon. Now, if you're saying if somebody's, let's say you're having visitation and the widow's standing up there, in the receiving line, and she's eating a cracker or a sandwich or whatever, that's her call.
Yeah.
But
what about you while you're fixing the bodies up, and you guys are there finishing off a Reuben or something? You ever had?
Yeah, no, that's frowned upon. They OSHA doesn't like for you to eat or drink in the prep room.
Damn. Because sometimes I'd want to have a beer or something by a body.
So that'd be frowned upon.
Have you had to bury any of your own family?
Yes. When I was working there, one of my grandmothers died, and so we handled that. I've had some great aunts and stuff like that have gone through the funeral home since I've had it. But both of my parents are still living, and all my other grandparents were already dead before I got into the funeral business. But I've had lots of cousins and people that I've known who've come through the funeral home.
Do people look at you weird because you work in the death trade?
Most of them have gotten used to it. Now, when I was in high school, the principal, he and I got along pretty good, and he used to always pick on me about it. He'd be like, Giles, I don't know what you're doing. Or sometimes he'd just look at me and be like, you're sick. You're sick and twisted.
Yeah. Is he dead or not?
No, he's still living.
He'll die.
I saw him at the funeral home probably about a month ago. He said, well, I see you're still here.
Yeah.
Got your name on the sign.
Say it'll be you soon. Now, what about our body? What about our colon and feces and stuff like that? What happens to that part of us?
That's one of the things that we suck out with that trocar.
Okay.
We'll suck that crap out of you.
Dang, and how long does it take? Just depends, kind of?
Yeah, it depends upon, what all is in the body and everything else. And, because some conditions put more fluid on the body and everything. Like if there's somebody that's very edematous and they've got a lot of extra fluid, we put extra fluids in them to kind of get that fluid out and to try to draw that fluid off the body.
Man. And so all that just goes down the drain. And then what do you put in the colon? What do y'all fill it up with?
We have a different chemical that is very similar to this. It looks the same, just different color, but it's designed to go back in there and to treat those cavities.
Wow. What color is it?
It is kind of a greenish blue.
Okay. And do you sew up the butt, the sphincter? Do y'all sew that closed?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Y'all just leave it open?
Well, I mean, normally you leave it natural.
Dang. And that thing stays natural?
Most of the time, yes.
Wow.
So
now, what if it gets a little unnatural? You got a little clip or something, a barrette or something you put on there?
It's more of what would be more like a plug.
A spackle or something?
So, or you can always...
Y'all caulk it? What do you do? Be honest.
No, it's more like a
cork.
More like a plug.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you go old school would be you would stuff it full of cotton. Because
put cotton in somebody's booty like a Build-A-Bear?
Yeah. I guess if you wanted to call it that. But there used to, sometimes people used to refer to morticians as cotton stuffers because we used a lot of cotton, to build up different things. And so they used to have to put a lot of cotton in there, especially when the fluids and the procedures weren't, as great, that they used to put cotton, in basically every orifice that you could leak from. They'd stuff it full of cotton.
Oh,
The
my
old
thick
guys
ass. I'd take half a rabbit probably, man. I'd need a decent amount. I'd need a decent amount. Any other good questions we got here? Let's get to one more, and then we'll just thank you for coming, Frank.
Wow.
What's up, you death daddies? Got a question out there. First of all, gang.
Gang, baby.
But I was wondering, my granny, she used to be a beautician, but she used to, nighttime as that mortician.
Okay, moonlighting with the deceased.
And she would go in there and she would do the makeup for the deads, them deceased. And I was just wondering, because she had some wild stories, have you, working in there at nighttime by yourself, deep in those depths of hell, have you ever experienced anything a little nutty, a little odd? Anyway, gang, death, baby.
Death, dog. Now, yeah, because a lot of people probably see you as like a Hellboy almost in a way. And so have you ever seen you ever had any spiritual experiences when you're in there? Like, does it get a little haunty? I would imagine it gets kind of haunty, huh?
No, it's one of those things that, you're just there, and it's not necessarily like, I don't ever feel like, there's ghosts or anything there, and I've never had any, quite crazy or wild experiences with any of the bodies or anything like that. I've never, felt like there was somebody else there or anything like that. Sometimes people will ask me that question similar to that, but no, I've never experienced anything like he's talking about.
Wow. So in the end of it all, you're saying you go open casket. That's the way to go, huh?
That's the way that I want to go. Mm-hmm. But that's my choice. And at the end, it's a personal choice, and what's right for me might not be right for you. You might want to be burned. That's fine. That's your choice. My choice is I want to be open casket because I want to have one more good suit on, so everybody can see it and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the way that I want to go.
I want to be Dan creme brulee, I feel like, or honey mustard. I want something. I'm ready for that next level. Is there something new on the horizon of burial that's starting to kind of peek its head about? Anything you're hearing?
Well, in some states they have this. It's kind of like what they call a flameless cremation. Mm-hmm. But it's very similar to
like an air dryer kind of.
No, it's more like how you see those old movies where the mob would put you in a 55-gallon drum full of chemicals and then you disintegrate. It's more like that. But that's not recognized as in some states.
That flameless cremation.
Yeah, it's not recognized in Kentucky yet.
Okay.
But I know a guy who's got that business in Missouri. And he does it for other funeral homes or whatever, because most of them haven't made that investment because it hadn't caught on yet. Some people are thinking that, freezing people is going to be the next thing.
Right.
But, you just don't ever know until that next thing gets here. And
how has the business been? Is it still a good business to be in?
it's still a good business to be in. Now, the business has changed a lot from what it used to be. What most people don't realize is that there's funeral homes that are what are considered to be locally owned and operated. Mm-hmm. Like, I've got a business partner, and he and I own the funeral homes. Mm-hmm. And then there's also corporate funeral homes. And those are funeral homes that are owned by your major corporations. And, I mean, they're traded on NASDAQ.
No way.
I mean, the stock exchange, yeah. So, there's companies that own funeral homes all across the country. And, they just buy and sell funeral homes, and that's what they do. So,
and is that does that get a little less personal care, you feel like, when you get involved with those big dogs?
I feel like some of those big ones there, they're not necessarily in it for the family. They're in it for the money, and they're just trying to cut corners so they can make more profit. I've born and raised where I work, And I see those people every day, and I work with, those are my friends, and I'm not going to take advantage of them, and I'm going to treat them with the utmost respect that they deserve, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they get a proper burial or cremation if that's what they choose, and I want it to be the best that it can for them. Whereas you've got somebody who doesn't know these folks taking care of them, they might not try as hard. That's not as important to them, because the person that lives down the road from me all my life, they're important to me. They're not important to whoever owns, some stockholder in California or Texas.
Deaths are us or someplace.
Exactly.
Dang.
And so, but that's the thing, you always know who you're dealing business with.
Yeah.
And,
There is something nice about that, knowing when you die who's going to handle you.
exactly. Because sometimes I have families that, they'll call me on my cell phone. They won't even call the funeral home number. They'll say, Mom died. We need you to come. And so here I come.
Yeah, it is something nice about knowing the person that's coming in.
Exactly.
Somebody doesn't have to come in with a name tag on, or, they don't even know. Yeah, somebody don't know you.
Right.
Somebody that comes up to the door. I don't want somebody pulling up and honking, like it's like I'm going to carry him out there.
Like the other day, I went to a house, and I did not know the deceased, but I was standing there talking to the deceased wife, and then the son came around the corner because he'd been back in one of the bedrooms getting something for his mother, and then he came out of the back bedroom, and I knew him, went to high school with him, so so that made her feel better knowing that, oh, he knows my son, he for sure going to take better care of my husband and everything else.
Wow.
And that's what we try to do. And
is there something killing people that you've noticed more over time? Like, you always hear about drug deaths and this and that. Are there things that are growing that you're noticing here at the end of the line?
Well, it was before COVID, they were talking about, the drugs and the narcotics.
Yeah, OxyContin and all that kind of stuff. Were you noticing it?
We were not having that big of an issue there in Hopkinsville, where they were in some of the other cities where, and I think it just, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to work its way through. And so drug overdoses were a big thing, especially in some of the bigger cities. It seems to have tapered off in the moment, or you're just not hearing about it. But, that does happen. And sometimes, if there's one drug overdose, you're going to get some more, especially if
if that batch comes through.
Yeah, if a bad batch comes through, you could see several.
Oh, yeah.
And, and that's the thing about drugs, that people get so dependent upon them that, you can have a bad batch come through and lose 5 or 6 people.
Oh, fuck. We had some LSD come through one time, and people couldn't even tie their shoes for a damn month,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't know what these drugs are going to do to you.
You don't. And some of these cancer drugs and these drugs that that they're putting people on to save, to try to prolong their life, are actually having reactions with like the formaldehyde and stuff like that. And so, you're getting sometimes a graying effect, or you're getting different effects on the body based on the chemicals that they're putting in them to try to save them.
And so you don't know that until you really put it in, huh?
Exactly.
Dang.
And so that's one of the things that you're trying to counteract as to what drugs that they've been on and everything else.
Somebody comes out with that damn Turkish gold tent or something.
That's why you got some of these accessory chemicals that are supposed to help balance out the pH and everything else that's in these fluids.
It's like treating a pool almost, huh?
Exactly. Because part of that goes in there is water, so you got to make sure that the water's good and everything else.
You ever fill somebody a little too much, and you're like, oh damn, we put a little too much in them?
Not really, because as you're putting that in, it's still pushing it out. So you're getting it right back out. So
I see. And so once it stops coming out, that's when you know to stop filling.
Well, no, you know by what's coming out, because you can tell when you're draining the blood, okay, this is blood. Now right now I'm getting a lot of fluid back. And so you've run its course. Yeah. So you can kind of tell that.
Man. I think that might be about it. Sean, you know anything else? Anything we missed?
Filled me in.
Literally, huh? Who has the best funeral music? Is it really like I would feel like at black funerals you'd have better music. Do you just have it?
Well, it just depends.
Because I've been to black churches. Growing up, I go to black churches, man. And, dude, you feel like you're sitting on the Lord's lap, at a black church.
Right. And, that's one of the things about it is here in the South, just like church, and this is not a racial thing, but just like how church is pretty well segregated, here in the South, so are funeral homes. Most of the time, for instance, the city that I'm in, we have primarily white funeral homes and primarily black funeral homes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I won't bury a black person,
Of course not.
or they won't bury a white person.
But people really stick to they'll stick to their culture more.
Their culture, their upbringing, and it's who they know.
Right.
They've known him all their life, and the others have known me all their life, and it's just just like how they choose to go to church. The church is predominantly white or black.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they stick to with the funerals, because that's
yeah.
the funerals and your church services. A lot of them go hand in hand.
They cross over.
One of the things that people don't think about with our job is all the coordination that's involved, throughout the lines when somebody dies or whatever. One service that I'll talk to you about for a minute, the gentleman was KIA, and that's military terminology for killed in action.
Amen.
But he was killed in action in World War II. So he dies in World War II in the Battle of Bataan. He is buried over there in a cemetery that they basically buried all the troops that got killed right there. He's buried there.
Oh yeah, buffet style. They put a bunch of them in one spot.
They would just dig graves. And they had this protocol that they did, and they had government issued raincoats, and they'd wrap the body up in the raincoat and they'd bury it, and then they'd move on to their next battle or whatever. Well, there's organizations out there that are going through and trying to find all these soldiers and bring them back to their homes.
Wow.
So, sure enough, I get a call from a family, and they have been in touch with one of these organizations, and they have found the remains of a guy from our town at Bataan. So what they did was they disinterred his body and flew it to Hawaii. And in Hawaii, they matched the DNA for him to one of his nieces. They matched that DNA to confirm that it was him. And then we started making the arrangements to get him back here. So, of course, they booked the flight, and they said, okay, he's going to arrive in Nashville at such and such day at such and such time.
So you guys show up at the airport?
So we show up at the airport with the family and everything else, meet with the airport police at Nashville. And
where do they come through? Baggage come? Just a large item like the golf bags?
Well, they travel underneath. They travel underneath on the plane. But when I was dealing with the airline, the airline's like, now what's going to happen is we're going to go out there and we're going to bring his body here, and you can, the family can receive the body at the here at baggage claim, or actually it's kind of like air cargo.
Oh yeah. And
then the head of the airport police, he showed up, and I started talking to him. He said, these are the cargo people. He said, I'm in charge. He said, you want to go out to meet the plane? I said, yeah, I want to go out to meet the plane. He said, well, put everybody in your vehicles and we'll go out and meet the plane. And so they brought airport vans and everything else, and we drove the hearse and everything out to the tarmac.
Wow.
They brought the, and because we had this was pre-COVID, so we had a full detail of Army men there, and they received the casket, right off the plane, carried him to the hearse, and it was a big deal, real emotional. They had everybody in the area, like in the terminal, come to the glass windows, and they all watched it, and they were all holding flags and everything else as they brought the body to the hearse. And then after that, then we brought him all the way back from out of the tarmac back to Hopkinsville.
And how big was he?
Well, they had him in a full-size casket.
Oh, damn.
Because what they did was they chronicled.
That's a large.
They chronicled everything that they had.
And do you believe it was really him or not?
I do. They had it down to, they had every one of his bones except for one. They had it all laid out. They had all the DNA. They had everything about him they had in this book that they gave to the families and everything else. So we're coming back, we've got police escorts all the way from Nashville, all the way, to the Kentucky state line. And that's when the Tennessee people broke off. And then when we got to Christian County, the sheriff's department was there waiting on us. And I bet you they had about 8 units there.
Damn.
And then when we got to the city of Hopkinsville, the city was there, and the community came out big for it. And the fire truck, they took the big boom ladder and everything else, and they had huge American flag draped that we drove under and everything else.
Damn.
And we took him out to we took him out to the local cemetery that his parents were buried at.
Wow.
All his brothers were buried there, and we buried him there.
That's
I mean,
magical.
we even had the PGR there, and the PGR is another group that we work with occasionally. And what they are is they're the Patriot Guard Riders, and they're motorcycle guys, and most of them are veterans and everything else. But they really got a lot of notoriety back when there was that group from Kansas that was going around protesting military funerals. You could call the PGR.
And they'd show up?
And they would show up. And so what they would do is they would ride their motorcycles, with the funeral. And when, like, if you were coming up to the cemetery or whatever, and there was the protesters, they'd stop right there in front of the protesters and rev those motorcycles up. You drive right on by, and you never could hear the protesters.
Oh, wow.
And so
that's really magical. People come out to support veterans,
Yeah.
It means a lot to people, especially to those families, especially getting to be back with your family. I think just have your resting place back with your family. There's something beautiful about that. How, if you're cleaning out somebody's colon, what if you don't get everything? Is there a time later where you're like, oh, I got to run this thing back again?
Sometimes, if you were not to get everything, you would see some distension in the abdomen.
Yep.
And then you would go back and you would do it, and you can
Wash
redo it.
twice, yeah.
So,
Damn.
Now what most people
Wash me twice. Put a damn piece of spearmint in my ass, man. I just want to be fresh when I'm laying there.
what some people don't think about is when somebody drowns, they sink to the bottom. But as they start to decompose and those gases break up in that cavity, that's what causes them to float. And so sometimes, especially back home around the lake, what will happen is somebody will drown, and so they might not find them for a day or two, and then whenever they start floating up, you don't ever know what time that's going to be. And sometimes what will happen is they'll float up, and they'll get caught up in a barge, that's either going upriver or downriver.
That wet hitchhiking.
And they won't notice it until daybreak. And then they'll have to stop the barge, and then they've got a lot of red tape and everything else. And, they find this person who's from Kentucky up in Illinois
Somebody's
or down in
crossing the
Mississippi.
state lines, yeah. Somebody's fucking hitchhiking.
Well, exactly.
Now, what about this? So you got that last gas in you. Your body builds that last gas. Do you have to let that out?
normally you can, because when we use that trocar, and
You ever get that hit of gas? You ever
and
hit that
so-
gas pocket?
you can hit a gas pocket and it will, shrink up or whatever. But sometimes after you've used that trocar, and there's a button that we use that's kind of like a screw-in button that we put on the person, and if they get distension, sometimes you can just take that button off and it'll release that pressure and release that gas.
And that's like a last fart almost that's in them?
I guess you could call it that.
And does it smell pretty bad?
A lot of times it would, yes.
Wow. I want that. Definitely, I'm doing one. You got to go out with a last blast, I think. Man. I can't tell if I'm more excited about dying or not after talking to you, honestly, Frank.
Well, as long as you've had a good run on Earth, there's always a time to check out. Don't get in a hurry. You only pass this way once.
That's it, huh?
That's right.
Do you feel like people will talk to you about death a lot?
Oh, yeah. Always got questions.
Do you feel like, do you ever have somebody wants to get dressed up in something real wild, like a nightgown, or somebody wants to be, dress their little cousin up like Superman or something?
Well, therefore, it kind of goes in phases. Like, you'll have phases where, people will want to be buried in like pajamas and stuff like that. And then sometimes, we have, because we're in Kentucky, we have a lot of people that like to be buried in, like UK jersey, not necessarily jerseys, but it might be a UK fleece or polo.
Okay,
or
so
stuff.
state sports pride.
Yes, rocking the sports pride all the way to the grave.
Damn. That's wild, man.
What
What will you wear, you think?
Oh, I'll definitely wear a suit. Probably a blue one. Probably
Blue looks good?
I like blue suits. It'll probably either be blue or black, but it won't be plain. It'll have some type of stripe or weave in it,
Okay.
Bright tie, probably, maybe a red or, a yellow, something like that, something kind of flashy, as far as the tie.
So go flashy is kind of the way to go, you think, a little bit?
So, when I dress, I will dress a little less conservative than some funeral professionals, but because it's I'm in a suit every day of my life. Just about every day I wake up and I put a suit on, and so I don't like to just stick with a solid brown, a solid blue, a solid black, and a solid gray. I've got on a gray pinstripe today with a bright pink tie, and everything else.
Oh, I'll die in your damn arms right now. You look like I'm ready, you're ready to help somebody.
Thank you. But, that's me, I've got a couple of suits that some people say are a little bright, but, that's my personality. I like to be, I'm here when you need me and I'm here for the seriousness of it. But, at the same time, it doesn't have to be all drab.
Have you ever had somebody die, they want to be dressed up like Superman, or somebody dressed up like a damn, dressed up like He-Man, or, a Miss Butterworth or anything like that? Somebody wants a particular type of costume?
Not so much as a costume. Like, we've had people who have worn like a Superman shirt or, something like that. And, but not a real costume, leotards and all that. No capes,
Yeah. What will my penis and stuff look like when I die? Does it look the same, or does it start to look a little different?
No, it'll look pretty much the same.
Nice. And what about like what happens to fake breasts? Do y'all puncture them and suck them out, or leave them?
No, you leave them.
Oh, hell
they paid good money for those.
Hell yeah, boy. You know what I'm saying, boy? Call me up, son. I'll come over there and I'll freaking put some makeup on those mounds, baby. Wow. And do you have to color the nipples at all with like a powder or a dust?
No, because normally those are covered up.
And what about the balls? Do you have to suck the stuff out of those?
No.
Wow. Interesting, man. Well, man, I think I'm just dang. I guess I just know everything I know now. Do your eyes stay the same color they were?
Yes.
That's cool.
But of course they're closed, so nobody really sees them.
Yeah. What bone was that guy missing? The guy that came back from
I'm not for sure. I don't remember now, but they had a picture in the book that they gave all the family members that had the entire skeleton laid out.
Wow.
And so,
what if somebody lost their legs? Do you bury them in that full size casket, or will you go a little shorter on that casket?
you'll still use that full size, because it's like everything else. If you tried to go smaller, you're going to be. They don't really make smaller caskets on a normal, so it's going to cost more.
Right.
Whereas, like if somebody is really big, they have to get a bigger casket. And there's a company out there, or used to be a company out there, called Goliath Casket Company.
Wow.
And that was their niche market, was they made oversized caskets.
Damn.
And their two most popular models were 48 inches wide and 60 inches wide. So that's 4 and 5 feet wide on the interior.
That's a damn queen bed.
I mean, they were big caskets, but when you needed them, you needed them.
Can two people legally be buried in one casket?
Technically, I guess you could, depending on most states, but but most of the time they don't go together.
Have you ever buried two in one?
I have never buried two people in the same casket. Well, let me rephrase that. I have never buried two full bodies in the same casket.
Amen.
I have buried people, like sometimes one of them wants to be cremated and the other one wants to be buried, and if the one that's cremated dies first, I have put their cremains in the casket with the other one when the other one dies. I've done that, but I've not put two full bodies in the same casket.
Could you handle it?
Could I handle it? As far as, you'd have to have a wider casket, but I mean, I guess I could do it if I had to.
Hell yeah.
But I've had double funerals, but they've all been in separate caskets.
And is it cheaper to go two in one casket?
No,
Because I'll cut corners, man.
because what happens is it becomes more expensive because when you're getting into that bigger size, because a bigger size casket is more expensive. When you're getting wider, and then also they're not as many out there as there are standard size caskets.
And you can't just lay somebody right on top of somebody else. That'd be tacky, I guess.
That'd be tacky.
What about what's the smallest casket you've ever done?
It would be like an 18-inch.
Damn.
Yeah.
Like a damn baby Snicker almost.
For like a stillborn baby.
Oh. That's heartbreaking, man. Oh, life is wild, huh?
Yeah. One time we had this situation where a lady had a baby who had died, and the baby had already been dead for 24 hours and was just sitting there with the mother in the hospital room, because the mother was still in the hospital. And I remember I met with the baby's daddy about the funeral arrangements before they even released the body, because the mother wasn't letting the baby go.
Wow.
And so I told the baby's daddy, I said, you just go back to the hospital and you tell them I'll be there at 6:00 tonight to pick up the body. And when I get there, she'll need to give me the baby. And I got to the hospital, signed all the paperwork and everything else. And I told the nurses on the maternity ward, I said, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to speak to the family. And then I'm going to take the baby on back to the funeral home to go ahead and work on preparing it for the funeral. And the nurse laughed. She said, I want you to know, she said, she's had that baby for over 24 hours. She said, and nobody's taking it away from her. She said, so good luck with it. Good luck with that, but you'll be here all night.
Wow. And so you went in there.
So I went into the room there, and I spoke to all the family that was there, and she gave me the baby. And when I walked out of the room with the baby, she started screaming, and because she was so overwhelmed with grief, and I could still hear her screaming when I got on the elevator.
Oh.
And because it's so hard to lose a child, it's so unnatural that you don't know how you would react. Nobody knows how they're going to react until they're in that situation. It's easy to look at it and say, "Oh, I would never react that way," but you don't know how you're going to react.
Oh yeah. Amen,
I mean that's somebody's child or that's somebody's spouse, and when they get overcome with grief, you just got to be there for them. And if they need to cry and scream, you just got to kind of help them cry and scream. But if whatever they need to be, you just got to be there for them. Death brings out the worst in people, but it also brings out the best in people. So you never know how somebody's going to react. You just got to be there for them.
And what do you carry a baby like that in that's that size, man? That's heartbreaking.
We wrap them in a baby blanket, and we carry them just like they were you would if they were a live child.
And do you sit them up in the front seat, or do you put them in the back, or what do you do?
Most of the time, what we would do is we would, in a situation like that, we would take a car and two people, and so one person would hold the baby in the car, and the other one would drive.
Wow.
They make what is called, it's like a box that you could put the baby in for, to transport it. But I'm not putting a baby in a black box that looks like a tackle box or something like that. I don't think that's fitting and appropriate. So we don't use those type of things.
Wow.
We just use the baby blanket because babies should be in a baby blanket, whether they're alive or dead, and they shouldn't be thrown in a box.
Amen.
You wouldn't carry a live one like that. I'm not going to carry a dead one like that.
Amen. Yeah. Oh, working at the finish line, man. You're working at the finish line.
That's right. Sometimes that finish line's real short to the starting line, and sometimes it's real far away. But you got to be there for all of it.
Wow. Yeah, it's fascinating, man. I don't know if there's anything else that I can take out of you today, man, except just to say thank you very much. And what's the name of y'all's outfit over there?
It's Huggert, Beard, and Giles Funeral Home in Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, man, for coming in and just filling us in on everything that's in that world, Frank Giles, thank you so much today, man. Oh, last question. When The Undertaker, remember the wrestler, when he really popped off, remember?
Yep.
Did that put a lot of pressure on you guys as Undertakers and stuff like that to really take it to another level?
No, but a lot of times when he was really big in wrestling, it would be, I would get a lot of comments, they'd be like, "Hey, Undertaker, let me be your manager. Let me be your manager, let me be your pallbearer,
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, those were some interesting times.
But did it put pressure on you to did it make you feel like, oh, I got to, be more athletic, or I got to show up and yell, or, anything that really, did it put any pressure on the industry?
No, we weren't out there practicing the tombstone power drive or anything like that,
Yeah.
But it didn't make me go hit the gym or anything like that.
Yeah. I just always wondered that, man. Frank Giles, thank you so much for being here today, man. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks for just kind of welcoming us into your world and what it's like. It seems like you're just kind of walking along a really unique part of existence. You're just you're not really guiding people, but you are you're just right there with them.
That's right. And the thing about it is it's kind of like if you fall in a hole and your neighbor jumps in that hole with you. And you'd say, well, why did you jump in the hole with me? And, you know, it's, well, I've been here before and I've gotten out. And so I'm here, you know, I've been through it before. I'll guide you right on through.
Yeah. Amen, man. Well, thanks for guiding us through this chat today. Frank Giles, we appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. Honored to be here.
Now I'm just floating on the breeze, and I feel I'm falling like these leaves. I must be cornerstone. Oh, but when I reach that ground, I'll share this peace of mind I found. I can feel it in my bones, but it's gonna take a little time for me to set that parking brake and let myself unwind. Shine that light on me. I'll sit and tell you my stories. Shine on me, and I will find a song. I will sing it just for you. And now I've been moving way too fast on the runaway train with a heavy load of my past. And these rails that I've been riding on, they're worn so thin